Hello sir. So today I Chetan Agarwal from EEE department and my colleague Parag Pratap Singh from EEE department are going to explain about the impact of COVID-19 on micro as well as macroeconomics of the India and as well as around the world. So sir, as you know how the countries it has a devastating effect on all the economies in the world as well as the major ones, especially the minor ones have got affected a lot because like of poor economies, the weakening currencies and everything going around. It isn't a very good outlook. So we are going to explain how it can be improved and what's wrong with the economies around the world. So I'll explain the macroeconomic part, the one which is on the wider scale of things, the things like GDPs, the currencies, the equity markets, the debt markets, the insurance, all the major things which govern. And on the microeconomic scale, for my friend Parag will tell. So on the macroeconomic front, as you know, sir, the COVID-19 pandemic has affected the public health emergencies. It has affected like almost every corner of the world, and it has prompted many of the countries to go into lockdown, which has affected economies on a very big scale, especially the travel industry, the retail industry, the one which deals with like people being more aware of it, the ones in which spendings like luxury industry, people have become very much conservative in their approach. So as given by major banks like the Citibank, Goldman Sachs and all the Morgan Stanleys, they are expecting a very neutral growth on GDP on the US and South and North America. For Europe, they're expecting a negative number. For emerging markets, what they're expecting is a very negative to neutral number. And for China, positive growth, but not what was expected on a year-on-year basis. As you can see on the next slide, this is the growth. So the one on the top left is the black is the median. So they're expecting around, on the global scale, they're expecting around 1% growth expectation in percentage. In China, they're expecting good percent, but they were expecting 6. And on the lower side, they were expecting 2 or maybe 1.5. Now they're expecting around 3.5. And the European nations, they were expecting somewhere around neutral growth to -5, but now they're expecting -2. United States, they're expecting +2. The mid-range was from +2 to -4. But now, as the conditions are like getting better and whatever is their concern, they're expecting a very neutral growth over here. So now I'll talk how the capital markets affected. Sir, as you know that how the world is governed, how all the economies are emerged in a cells, and each one of us are dependent. Like the Dow is dependent on Nifty, the Nifty is dependent on the S&P, and S&P independent on the FTSE and all. So that is how it is. So this coronavirus thing brought a lot of panic amongst the people. As we saw the volatility index rising up to in levels of 80, which I haven't seen in the last, I think never it has been seen. So yeah, a lot happened. In the March 2020, we saw around a 30-35% drawdown on the major equity markets, and at that time the cases weren't that huge, but the fear among the people caused that kind of sell-off, which is just seen 3 times in the last memory: the 1987 crash, the 2008 housing bubble, and 2001 internet bubble when all the tech companies started soaring. It has actually a lot of loans were getting defaulted, so many of the sovereign like those sovereign bonds, right, the G-Secs and other government securities, their rates collapsed because a lot of people started selling bonds, so which caused the bond prices. A lot of people started buying bonds and shifting from equity to debt because that is always like the safer form, right? So once you buy the bonds, the bond price increase and the yield goes down. So that is what happened at that time. This reflects the seriousness of the current situation, and the prospects of the financial market and the broader economy are now inexorably tied to how soon the virus can be brought under control and the life business can return to normal. So that is how it is. So that is how the capital market played. So yeah. So as you can see, the major markets are here. So basically, the Jan to Feb, it was quite flat. The markets were doing nothing. But you can see the drawdown. Okay, there's almost a 40% drawdown in some of the countries, and almost everyone saw the drawdown because we are very much in that kind of scale. You understand? We're all very much together in this thing. That is how it happened. A strong fundamental. So there's an index called Guy Carpenter, which like tells how people are spending their US dollar money, how people are spending their money. So the fundamentals of reinsurance remain strong. Despite a period of unprecedented catastrophic loss in the recent years, the sector continues to operate in an environment of plentiful capacity. This is basically the kind of the insurance thing which we're getting, like how the insurance happened and things. People have started getting more into insurance. The solvency ratios have fallen from 235% to 206%, which is a very good sign because what we need is companies not going bankrupt, as in the case of 2008 crash. So this is basically the healthcare kind of a crash, but in 2008 it was basically a financial crisis, right? So this is what. So as you can see in the slide, in the end it's written, given the challenges, these are respectable outcomes. Even if some ratios are towards the bottom of guidance levels, reinsurers remain in a reasonably shape overall. So this is what it means. So this is how it is. So how the people are how the investments are being done by a normal set of people in US. As you can see, most of them are into fixed income. You know why? Because that is more the safest form, and in this fixed income, I believe most of them would be in the government bonds, the government securities, or maybe some gold bonds. You can see there's some part of equity, some parts of cash and short term, so which is always a safe money. Very less real estate, because real estate being a capital intensive business is most likely to go under some serious issues. Loans, affiliated and others. Now my friend Parag Pratap Singh will explain about the rest of the slides. Thank you, sir. So I will continue the presentation from here. Myself, Parag Pratap Singh from 6th semester, Triple E department. So microeconomics. So introduction will be that beyond the human tragedy, there is a direct economic impact from lives on lost in an outbreak. Families and loved ones lose their income and in kind of contribution to household income such as childcare of note, which means many of those most likely to die and are no longer working and are less likely to be primary provider for their families. Keeping in mind though that in many low and middle class economic countries, individual work under the later age. Though less likely to pass away from COVID 19, many working age adults still fall ill and their families will feel the financial burden as they miss work for days or weeks. Most of the economic impact of the virus will be as we are already seeing from inversion behavior, the actions people take to avoid catching the virus, which can, it should be noted, be logical and proportional response. As depicted in the figure above, the aversion behavior comes from three sources. First, the government imposed bans on certain types of activities, as when the government of China orders factories to shut down or at least closes most shops throughout the country. Firms and institutions, including private colleges and schools, take proactive measures to avoid infection. Business closure, whether through government bans or business decision, result in lost wages for workers in many cases, especially in the informal economy, and there is no paid leave. Third, individuals reduce trips to the market, travel, going out, and other social activities. So this is a channel of potential economic impact of COVID-19. There is direct cost from sickness and mortality, which is affected to health center, and other impacts such as aversion behavior, which includes government mandates, firm and institutional decision, consumer choices, where government mandates govern all these factors such as education, manufacturing, retail services, trade and transport, which all have long-term effects and short-term effects. In long term, there is a loss of human capital and infrastructure deterioration, and short terms it affects wages and income fails and poverty of the nation hikes. So this is all over. This is overview of the channel of the potential economic impact of COVID-19. For explaining further, there are short-term effects. These actions affect the sectors of the economy: the health sector, manufacturing, retail, and other services, trade and transportation, education, and others. These in turn translate into reduced income both through supply side, reduced production drives up prices for consumers, and demand sides, reduced demand from consumer hurts business owners and their employees. These short-term economic impacts can translate into reduction in long-term growth as the health sector soaks up more resources and as people reduce social activities. Countries invest less in physical infrastructure as school close, students lose opportunities to learn, hopefully briefly. But now more vulnerable students may not be returned to the education system, translating to lower long-term earning trajectories for them and their families and reduced overall human capital for the economies. So what can we expect from this? So an example will be like economic estimates of globally impact vary drastically, with Bloomberg hypothesizing 2.7 trillion in lost output, the Asian development scenarios from 77 billion to 347 billion, and OECD report taking a halving of global economic growth. Browning base as a multiple of monthly expenses versus December over January employed has seen a major impact, where the yellow line is the straight loan and green is CARES Act. Other graph is of percentage of business facing major challenges like cash flow defect, raw material shortage, labor shortage, and demand reduction. Thank you. Hoping for a V-shaped recovery on all aspects. So everything that has been explained by Chetan and Parak. At the end, I would like to conclude everything by giving us a brief summary of the entire impact of the COVID-19 pandemic that was on our economy, the economy of India, a developing country. So for that, first of all, we will see what is macro and what is microeconomics. So macroeconomics is a very large term. It is used to comprise of terms like GDP and unemployment rate, the changes in unemployment rate, gross developed domestic product. These are very like large terms that are usually seen as the like how a very huge country is functioning. So on the other half, microeconomics is not about very large concepts of economics. It is rather a behavioral study. So it is a behavioral study of people who are involved in the allocation of scarce resources and how is their like interaction with the people. And so the main impact,
like the main challenge that was faced during this COVID-19 pandemic on our country was the stringent measures that were placed for containment in order to provide to prevent the spread of the disease. So due to these stringent measures, it led to reduced working hours of factories and workhouses. So factories and workhouses couldn't really work and produce anything because the government could not afford to have people gathered in one place. So that was really problematic, and we could not really produce anything such that the GDP growth rate for the 2020 year, that was the year when COVID-19 hit our country, it was minus 7.97%. This also led to reduced efficiency and output of production. This was also very problematic, and there was economic disruption. There was a economic chain breakage. There was job loss. Many big companies, they did a very large layoff in our country. People had to lose jobs, and this pandemic created a really emergency like situation for our country, for a developing country. So government had to make certain measures to benefit our people, to help them during this. So these certain measures that our government took were friendly. Certain policies that were passed for guarantee of private debt to people, to cut our interest rates on the loans that were given. Then income preservation for certain people, like even if the offices are not working, the offices are required to pay certain money to the people for basic survival. After all these challenges that were faced, that really led to a downfall to our country's economy, there were certain policies of revival that at least now, if the COVID situation is improving in our country, can't say really anything about the future. But as for now, certain policies, the behavior of our government, it can really affect the working of our country's workhouses in case a third wave hits us. So there can be really certain policies for revival that can be very helpful. So like the policies that the governments make, they need to be really flexible and agile for next 2 to 5 years, because the workhouses, the plantation, these people, they have faced really a very bad impact due to the stringent measures, and also the pace of relaxation is very slow. So again, due to non-available of produce, the policies are need to be really flexible for their benefit, and then they need to relocate sources across sectors for increasing the production growth. They need to find people with or production houses with real potential that can generate money, income, and employment, and start relocation of capital and fund them. Government also needs to work on its own to support and rehabilitate our economy. Apart from all that, the most important during a pandemic that is a global pandemic is preserving cross-border trades, because certain countries that are really poor, for them in a situation of a global pandemic, it becomes really hard to live. People really thrive for small and petty needs like water, food, medical supply, vaccines, medicines. So all these things are really problematic for poorer countries. So if a really regular cross border trade is supplied, so many problems can be solved by this import from this cross border trade. Now here we can see two graphs. Let me maximize the graphs a bit. Okay, I can't. So in these graphs, we can see the first graph that shows us that is the investment in OECD economy. So the red curve is the case if a single wave hit, and the green that goes further down, that is for a double hit. Again here, per capita income for a country like India having 13,000 to 15,000 of per capita income, if it further reduces due to this double hit scenario, it is due to this double hit scenario in the green. So because before that till 2019 it is really fine, it is increasing. So it becomes really problematic to live, even to have basic needs. After that, apart from all the problems faced by our country in terms of economy, be it decline in the GDP growth rate, be it various many other problems that our country faced, there were some positives like blended learning by the people of our country, not only like implemented by universities and colleges, but also on the personal level. Various people they skilled themselves using these methods. Also, management systems for scrutinization of various events, and again the internet. It has a lot of material for self improvement and learning. So all that material became available to people for growth.